0.21 is a significant amount of Bitcoin. Well, 0.21, that's not very much. That's not going to move the needle on anything. Like, that's what they talk about. Like, it's realizing in the grand scheme of things, you're in the like top 1% of the world has the ability to hold that much Bitcoin. That correct, could lead to a quote unquote retirement number if Bitcoin continues its ascent that it does and has the ability to like become the next world reserve currency. What can be helpful for you is separating the USD exchange rate with the amount of Bitcoin that you have and focusing on the Bitcoin units. Because that's the other thing. When you're early in your stacking journey, when you're early just researching Bitcoin on YouTube, just trying to find these initial answers, you're like, well, how much is enough? Like how much, like how many dollars should I hold? How much Bitcoin should I hold? That's honestly a classic question, even for people that have been in Bitcoin for a long time. That's a classic question. But on the front end, I've just found that like, look, this $13,000 of Bitcoin about gets you to 0.21. And then what do? You take it 0.01 at the time. 0.01 at the time, that's $620 standing here right now today. Just, can you get 0.01 a month? Can you get 0.01 every other week? And
Bing bong, I am back with another edition of the State of Bitcoin podcast, where I've got recurring guests. He hasn't been on in a while, but I've got Brian Harrington, now of Marketing Unfold, and a YouTuber who's been absolutely blowing up on the idea of this 0.21 Bitcoin here, Brian. So I'll start off the bat, man. Why do you think people are resonating so much with the 0.21 Bitcoin? Is it that it's not that out of reach? Is it the full number bias? What is it about this 0.21 Bitcoin that people are just loving so much?
Absolutely. Here's what it is. It's because you can wrap your head around it and helps you focus on the Bitcoin units. So, dude, thanks so much for even just like calling me a YouTuber. And I'm super thankful to, be marketing at Fold. And I mean that, to be honest. Like I've been watching Bitcoin content on YouTube since like the Tone Vase days, since the like 2016 like days, ripping YouTube videos. Okay. And where the 0.21 came from was I've wanted to do Bitcoin talking head videos on this website forever. I've always wanted to, but they always went nowhere. Like we were talking offline about just YouTube packaging and how to do it better. My Bitcoin talking head videos would go nowhere. My solar ones started to work a little bit. So I did the whole like solar stuff, but even the solar Bitcoin mining ones wouldn't do anything. Just like Sunrun solar review would like do it. Okay. And why does that matter to your question? The reason why that matters to your question is because finally, on one of my videos, I said all in the right order. Hey, I've talked to thousands of Bitcoiners, both in person and online, and I know it can be helpful for you. And literally what can be helpful for you is separating the USD exchange rate with the amount of Bitcoin that you have and focusing on the Bitcoin units. Okay. That's what can be helpful. And then it's like, once you're focused on the units, it's like, okay, having a goal, like what gets measured gets managed, having a goal and having an achievable goal that feels like near term that you can reach out and grab it matters a lot. Okay. And so I was just like playing around with the like calculator on Google or whatever. And it's like, look, if you take 21 million, divide that with 0.21, 100 million. Okay. 100 million divided by the 8 billion people in the world, top 1%. Like it's technically 1.25. Top 1.25%, okay? And then you go and you're like, how much is 0.21? Now you focus on the exchange rate. How much is 0.21 in dollars? $13,000, okay? And then what that leads to is my favorite thing to talk about. And honestly, my favorite thing to talk about is influence and like your personal brand and your influence and like who you are, why are you here? Like very kind of like core deep stuff, okay? And like, what is that connected to? What's that connected to? What that's connected to is $13,000 of fiat, unfortunately, is not very influential. Like it's a great amount of money. I understand personal finance is super personal for everyone and everyone will have a different association with that number. Absolutely, completely. In the grand scheme of things in the world, unfortunately, $13,000 is not influential. Like you don't have the ability to impact very much in your own life and you don't have the ability to impact very much in your community, much less the world, okay? And so you're definitely not in the top 1%, like with that number. You actually, according to like our friends at ChatGPT, need $1 million. Like you need $1 to $1.2 million of fiat in order to be in the top 1% globally. Okay. So the influence of needing to amass $1 million, 1.2 million in the old world to have that much influence contrast that with $13,000 and what it takes to that much labor, that much of your, time and efforts to get that. That's what I'm hoping to relay with that of like 0.21 is a significant amount of Bitcoin, because that's the other thing. When you're early in your stacking journey, when you're early just researching Bitcoin on YouTube, just trying to find these initial answers, you're like, well, how much is enough? Like how much, like how many dollars should I hold? How much Bitcoin should I hold? That's honestly a classic question, even for people that have been in Bitcoin for a long time. That's a classic question. But on the front end, I've just found that like, look, this $13,000 of Bitcoin about gets you to 0.21. And then what do? You take it 0.01 at the time. 0.01 at the time. That's $620 standing here right now today. Just can you get 0.01 a month? Can you get 0.01 every other week? And that's where it came from. That super helped me when I was watching Bitcoin. I'm on the other end of the couch, like watching Bitcoin YouTube, in 15, 16, 17. So that's where it came from.
Yeah, 100%. And I think it's a lot of things that the reason why, the shit coins, crypto, all that kind of stuff has a lot of success is because of that whole number bias and everything like that. So I think the 0.21, like you're saying, it makes it something that's more obtainable, right? I mean, so, I just did the calculation. It's like 35, 36 bucks a day. If you did that every single day for a year, you think about it, you go take you and your wife or you and a kid out for lunch or something like that. You're spending that every single day, right? So, maybe that is still a lot of money to some people. I don't want to be insensitive or anything like that too, but it is a little bit more obtainable to get something like that as well. And now, do you think that is going to be a number that, maybe you reach, and that's a potential retirement number down the road too, with the way that number go up has been going?
Yeah, so I'm not the best on like throwing around the word retirement. That's why I lead off with that word like influence. I think but I get that comment back a lot. Like because the video has like ripped off. I think the original one is at like 160,000. And so that comment though, the question of like, well, 0.21, that's not very much. That's not going to move the needle on anything. Like that's what they talk about. Like it's realizing in the grand scheme of things, you're in the like top 1% of the world has the ability to hold that much Bitcoin. That correct could lead to a quote unquote retirement number if Bitcoin continues its ascent that it does and has the ability to like become the next world reserve currency. Like, so yes, if that mental picture is like motivating and interesting, absolutely it could. I also the philosophical and like moral like movement of Bitcoin also is like so slammed together to the investment case in my head that I'm guilty of like ping ponging back and forth when I talk about it so much. And so that's the reason why I think it's interesting to be able to be like, I own a fixed amount of this fixed network and I'm part of the solution propelling Bitcoin to be the next world reserve currency. That's something that has always, again, back to what's helpful on the front end of YouTube. I've always noticed that people that have that extra like kicker motivation of it's kind of two birds with one stone. Again, like it's two birds with one stone of the ability to impact the world and make a positive investment at the exact same time. There's not very many things that you can kind of like so cleanly knock that out at the same time.
I don't think there's really anything else outside of Bitcoin with that, to be honest with you. I mean, like the freedom money, the technology, everything else, it seemingly has, some sort of, shortcoming that you have to like neglect, right? Whether it's, stocks, the stock market isn't open 24/7, 365. You got to wait until Monday at 9:00, yada, yada, yada. Real estate, slow to turn around, a lot of taxes on it, all these different kind of things. So, I hear you on that, but I think like that's the true, essence of Bitcoin and kind of why people can grasp onto it and maybe really resonate with it. But, it also comes into like the mindset aspect of almost denominating things in sats and getting it from that angle. So do you think that that's maybe a shift in the mindset where it's like, hey, if you obtain 0.21 Bitcoin right now sitting at 13 grand, that's going to be a mindset shift that says, hey, whether you retire on it, whether that's your savings, like just that number is good. And, say Bitcoin gets to $1 million here, that's, $210,000 in a world like that. So, is that where you see this kind of going? Is that, getting more away from the full number bias and towards that?
Absolutely. Yeah. And it can to that person that spent $13,000 on and then of their labor today, and then having that potentially be $210,000 in the future, like that supercharges your savings. Like that is beating inflation in real time. Like, and that's what everyone who's been stacking Bitcoin for the past 10 years, like everyone since 2014, 2015, 2016, they've experienced that. I'm sitting in a house right now that I would not be in the position that I am had I not chosen to take a look at the amount of Bitcoin units and not be so focused on the exchange rate in the moment, again, 10 years ago. And so, yeah, I think it's all about focusing on the units.
Yeah, 100%. And then, but 10 years ago, Brian, that things were a little bit different than they are now, right? We've got nation states talking about Bitcoin. We've got, Trump, RFK talking about Bitcoin at the Bitcoin conferences. We've got El Salvador accepting Bitcoin as a legal tender. So, with all that being said, did you think we were going to be here 10 years ago? One, and two, where do you think we're going? Crystal ball, tinfoil hat, how quickly do you think this thing is taking off?
Yeah. So I love this question. Because okay, this is just top of my mind right now. It's like recency bias. I tweeted out basically what I said off the top of the math on 0.21 puts you in top 1% globally, right? And there was just heel biters effectively of that only matters if it becomes a world reserve currency or if the whatever, and kind of just nitpicking everything you just outlined of the ETFs, presidential candidates talking about it, nation states adopting it. Yes, I do think we're right on schedule. I know that might be a weird answer, but yes, I think we're right on schedule, and I think it is going to get faster. And why do I think we're right on schedule? Because personally, in my own life, 5 years ago, 2019, our local meetup, we met at a bar called Tony's Deli. We would tip our bartender in Bitcoin, but I couldn't connect fully with the owner in order to get the bar to take Bitcoin. Yeah, that was the status we were at, right? So it was that. And then also when we were onboarding kind of normie adjacent people that were already at the bar, they would have to download the app, maybe come back following. It was this delayed process for a new person to join or whatever, right? Now, fast forward to 2019. Well, and back then, there was no way to be a regular person not holding dollars because none of the Bitcoin exchanges, nothing had fully come full circle yet, right? And so we were still all grasping with the fact of is Bitcoin money? Is it investment? What about the tax? There was a lot of friction back then, 5 years ago. Okay. Now today, fast forward today, Grey Wolf Brewing, they take Bitcoin, and I've watched normie adjacent people come and pay with Lightning out of Coinbase. I've watched them pay with Lightning out of Cash. I've watched nerds from the internet show up with whatever their Lightning wallet is, or that I eCash and all that stuff that I'm admittedly not up to speed on. I've watched nerds be compatible with the bar with that, and then I've watched straight boomers with their exchange apps pay at the same bar and watch it work on the same night. That's literally improvement. And you can call that anecdote if you want, but I'm calling out big name apps and big name software that has improved since then. And I'm watching real people adopt it. And then number two, this is Fold completing the loop that you're now able to be a regular W-2 person and not hold dollars full time is amazing. That truly is different. And that did not exist 4 or 5 years ago. And so I have a really big passion for kind of that regular W-2 earning American, and letting them know that it's not just influencers that can live on Bitcoin. It's not just El Salvador that can live on Bitcoin. It's not just digital nomads that can live on Bitcoin. I live in the suburbs with 2 young kids and have rental property, and I'm a regular suburbs person. And you can do that now. Fold is built for regular people to like do that now. And then why is that an answer to your question? The answer to your question, because the fact that today, sitting here on your show today, you don't have to use dollars full time means that the speed of not having to use dollars is going to get better and better and better. And the friction is going to go down and down and down in real time. Like I almost equate it to more like smart home software or just software, any software things in general. Like you can now use software to have inflation impact you way less. Like you just, it's just an off button for inflation. Like, no, thank you. I'm not using that. Thanks.
Well, you know what's crazy too is they say like technology and everything's supposed to be deflationary, but I mean, if you look at the price of the iPhone, the prices of like technology has just skyrocketed. So like with software, right? Obviously, everybody kind of thinks of AI as the latest and greatest kind of software. Do you see that as almost like as big of a digital revolution as Bitcoin here, where that could be something that helps us get to a new point where maybe we don't need as much jobs, as much fluff or whatever it is, but it makes everything a lot more efficient, similar to how Bitcoin can in a Bitcoinized world. Are you looking for the best way to store your seed phrase? Well, I've got it for you. It's Stampseed. They've got the #1 punch place where you can order a full-on package where they've got every single thing. They've got all the letters. You could just get it in there. And they've got this sick hammer, which they've engineered to make it so easy for you to punch in that titanium steel plate and store your seed phrase in the most secure way possible. So go ahead and get your Bitcoin off of these exchanges and use promo code Green Candle for 15% off. They're helping power the show. They've got the Bitcoin logo. You can punch it into your seed phrase as well. If you could see it here, they've got a lot of cool stuff. And now I'm helping empower you to get your Bitcoin off an exchange utilizing Stampseed and storing your seed phrase in the most secure way possible. Now get to it. All right, back to the show.
I think kind of back to that question of like, well, how many dollars should I hold? How much Bitcoin should I hold? Right? Like currently and forever, you've kind of had to like make that decision yourself. You've had to budgeting. That's why so many people don't like budgeting and don't like, because you have to like think about what are your goals, like what it is or whatever. But if it's just like, if you're direct depositing your paycheck to Bitcoin and you're able to like project out, these are the days that the bills need to do it, that like I definitely believe there's like a lot of heavy automation, like deep learning stuff that can happen just simply based on your habits and the math of like Bitcoin being better than fiat. Like, and that's the other thing that I think has flipped since back then. How I keep making comparisons to 5-6 years ago is if you like the same reasons why it's good to hold Bitcoin over dollars long term, it's honestly like really close in the short term also. And like we kind of have this whole thing of like, oh, it's volatile, oh, it's volatile, oh, it's volatile. Like if you were able to like shave off just there's already people doing this manually today. So to your point, if you just add in a little bit of AI, a little bit of deeper learning, a little bit of kind of just like habit formation of like letting the automation software do it. Yeah. Like I think a one-click off button for inflation is gonna happen.
The one-click off button for inflation, is that just the money printer or is that the Bitcoin buy button there?
That's the Bitcoin. That's automatically being in Bitcoin with all of your resting surplus all the time.
Yeah, okay, that's fair to say, because I mean, I made the joke here because I mean, obviously we've got the US debt just going out of control. I mean, I think the new tweet that's kind of hot that's going around is if you were to buy $500,000 worth of whatever it is, or go that much, if you were to earn that much every single day since the Great Pyramids were built, you would still have less than half the money that the US government has borrowed since June. So, with that being said, it's just like we're spiraling out of control here. So, I mean, Bitcoin seems to be the only life raft with everything that's going on. But, do you still think that the facade, obviously, when you kind of open your eyes to Bitcoin, I always think it's interesting. You think everything's going to break immediately. but you've been in it for so long, you probably thought it's going to break and things were going to crash and burn multiple times. So do you think that the facade is still going to go on here, or where do you think we're at just like, overall with everything?
Yeah, that's a good question. That's a good question. And I think it's kind of tied to your automation question. I think it's more tied to like Bitcoin is an improvement on fiat money and you can choose to use it instead. Like the same way you can choose to get the new iPhone or the same way you can choose to get the more efficient car or the new more efficient computer or whatever. Like, I think you can choose to use the more efficient money. And I think the gap between people that choose to use the efficient money and don't use the efficient money is going to continue to get worse and worse. And so I don't, that's my new, I think, yes, back in the day, I might have been a little bit more in oh, something dramatic is going to happen. Something dramatic is going to happen. But as I get older and as I continue to try to just talk to Bitcoiners every day about just that question, how many dollars do you hold? How much Bitcoin do you hold? And what's your friction on holding more Bitcoin? I don't actually spend my time thinking a lot about anything dramatic happening. I more think about individual by individual, hey, what's your Bitcoin split? Hey, what's your Bitcoin split? And people are continuing to up it and up it and up it. Even people that say they're already their long-term savings is already max 100% Bitcoin. Totally. Lots of people have been doing that for years. But the short term and the medium term money, I think that percentage is going up for a lot of people. And so I don't think there's going to be, I don't think there's going to be a collapse. Because again, even taking Bitcoin out of it for a second, what have people already been doing? This as a real estate guy, people have already been using interior square footage to not hold fiat money. Interior square footage was already a replacement for fiat money. And owning interior square footage on loaned money is the number one way to become a millionaire in the United States. Because you just do it and you just wait for inflation and money printing to continue happening. And so there already has been an off button for it, but not everyone presses the button. Because one of the problems with real estate is you have to have the down payment. So then not everyone is able to have the down payment, which, dude, honestly, okay, that's just, so $13,000, $0.21 Bitcoin. Can you down payment a house for $13,000? Maybe in some cities, I don't know. Maybe you could a townhome in very, very, very certain cities, maybe. But not really.
Majority so the average home price right now, I believe, is 450,000 in the US, and maybe even that might be even be median, but right. I know the median is over 400,000. Just for reference, when I was interest rates were under 3 and I bought my house just under 400,000, I needed to come to the table with 30 grand for the FHA, the lowest amount. So I mean, I think it's nearly impossible to find that unless you have a VA loan, which is a very unique kind of circumstance.
And most likely then the type of house you're getting won't appreciate anyways. Then it's literally just it might be a mobile home. It's not going to appreciate. And so comparing that, the amount needed to get on the Bitcoin train is the Bitcoin train has the lowest barrier to entry of anything that can help you start to beat inflation. And so forever, I think it's just people that choose to find the way to beat it and people that don't. And so I don't know. I don't know if there's going to be, I don't really think about a collapse a lot. I just think about how do you make it easier and easier and easier for people to press the off button.
Yeah, and the off button seems to be the buy button for Bitcoin, though, right? I mean, because it's the only thing that can is truly scarce and can truly appreciate against a currency that's depreciating at an all-time rate, because it's absolutely insane how much the money printing and everything like that is going on. But you're in California, so I feel like you're in a little bit of a unique place because on the flip side of things, you've been there for a while, so with everything that's been developing, have you noticed any sort of change in the past 4 years post-COVID time with everything? Do you see it as is it as bad as people are saying and kind of lining it out that way? Or is it, are you in your kind of Bitcoin bubble or whatnot?
Let's see. Where do I want to go with this? I could throw out a general, just punch at LA. I don't like going to LA is one thing. I could throw that out, but Here's what I'll throw out. Actually, I don't super like punching LA or loving LA. It just is what it is. Here's what I'll throw out. California, the Port of Long Beach, and like the Port of Long Beach, and right next to it brings in 40% of U.S. imports. Okay, and then I live in Riverside County, California. All of the trains, all of the warehouses, all of the Amazon, all of that stuff gets on trains, comes right through here. Gray Wolf Brewing, Norco, California, right at the center of that. Okay, so I don't buy the like. I don't super buy like any geographic arbitrage within the United States as far as like collapse or freedom or whatever. Like I don't super buy any of that. I think all of the US is like pretty in the same bucket, and everywhere has to like stand on its own merits. And I don't think the economy in California is like, I think the economy in California is like very, very big. And I think Southern California, like everyone, I just don't see Southern California like declining, really.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just kind of leveling out in my opinion, where it was like it saw this big boom and it was one point in time, and then it's I mean, it's everything goes in waves, right? I mean, like New York is still always going to be New York, LA is always going to be LA, like the big cities, the big hubs. There's always going to be people out there chasing their dreams for the opportunity and everything. I just think it's like kind of like interesting, kind of seeing the perspective and like kind of the narrative of the way things are going, because Santa Monica just announced, they're having like that Bitcoin. What is it? I don't know the full details of it. So the Bitcoin institution, is that right?
Yeah, Santa Monica Bitcoin office, I believe.
Oh, Bitcoin office, yeah. So I mean, obviously they're very open to Bitcoin, to even offer that in the government. And it seems like everybody that I meet, all the Californians that I meet that are into Bitcoin are super based and kind of going that way. So do you think like that's almost like the way that the things have shifted slightly in California is a reasoning for that? I mean, like I kind of maybe equate it to similar reasoning why I see so many great Canadian Bitcoiners, where they see like things that don't work. So that's why they put the other side.
You bought the dip on the Canadian Bitcoiners. You know all of that better than I do. I have not researched that very deeply. The other thing okay, so on the Santa Monica Bitcoin office, shout out to Dom on that a lot. Like that, want to know where that's from? And my understanding is that's just from a person who's really great at networking and really great at building influence and really great at having influence and caring about their local community and the people that they work with all the time. And then bringing Bitcoin to their industry. That's honestly that's a super great example of. And so that's where for people, that's why meetups are important. That's why taking Bitcoin to your own like industry is important. Like whoever you are already as a person, getting Bitcoin deeper ingrained in that is what's going to like cause it to continue the run that like it's on. That's where I take that from. And then just California as a whole, the one thing I would say is that I think that it's just I wouldn't want to build my network anywhere else because I already have a 10-year long network here. So I guess that's what I would say is that I think a lot of the shots on different parts of the US come from, I don't know what it's coming from, but because like I moved around a lot as a kid. And so the fact that after I'm done moving around and I planted and lived in the same like 50, 60 miles for now over 10 years of my life has led me to like so many different experiences in a positive network that I wouldn't have had if I was like constantly trying to like geo arbitrage the whatever. And so that's like, I think like Bitcoin gives you the ability to go deep on one geography and grow your influence. And just look, while we're already here, I'll also throw out like I'm the controversial statement. I'm pro HOAs. Okay. I think HOAs are actually going to be a huge thing for Bitcoin because I think HOAs are actually the most functioning form of like people working together. And so I do think we're going to see a wave of like Bitcoin HOA boards that start stacking Bitcoin on the HOAs. And then imagine HOAs buying their land back from the city. And then you have lots of micro cities. Okay. And so that's now your one thing. If you were to talk about like, if you wanted to get into like, California bonds or whatever could lead to a mixed match of tax receipts and blah, blah, whatever. Okay, great. then the HOAs that have the amount of Bitcoiners are able to stack Bitcoin and help solve that problem for them by buying the land back. And that's my version of like Citadel theory.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that that's where things are going now. The Citadel theory is kind of interesting because obviously there's been a lot of places the grassroots movements have been essentially popping up like all over the country and the globe. Now, I asked you about some of the surprise earlier about like what has surprised you the most in the past 10 years, but are you surprised to see more of these grassroots movements gain so much popularity around the globe and the country and everywhere, just seemingly pop up in these communities, just developing so rapidly?
No, I love it. No, I love it. I honestly wish there's more of it. Like, one, I wish there's more of it, and two, I wish people wouldn't say like Pubkey. Okay, Pubkey in New York, crushing it, right? Like Bitcoin stuff every single day. President's going there, demonstrating the circular economy, all that stuff, and I see everyone in their replies being like, "When Pubkey, like in my city, when Pubkey in my city, or whatever." I'm like, when Pubkey in your city, like, how about you go knock on the door and like find the Pubkey in your city? Like, so it's about that can happen anywhere is like my like one takeaway from that.
Yeah, I mean, I think Pubkey and everything like that, they're doing outstanding stuff. Obviously, Trump went there and bought the burger, and it's did you ever think that when you first got into Bitcoin that we'd have somebody as influential as that? I mean, first, obviously, 10 years ago, Trump being president was still kind of like a wild idea to throw out there, but two, a former president now using Bitcoin to purchase food, beer, burgers, all that kind of stuff. Did you think that we would be this far along in the development of, just commerce with Bitcoin?
No, that was crazy and awesome. No, like that legitimately was crazy and awesome. And it was on the same day as the FOMC meeting, like to boot, like on the same day that like private unelected people are choosing the cost of dollars for the entire world and are choosing to impact the like very real ability for people to like manage economic activity in the world. Like private individuals are doing that for the whole world. You have another like very powerful person demonstrating that an open source known monetary protocol has the ability to like be traded for food, like the literal basic life necessity of food. No, I think that's like extremely giant.
Yeah, because I think you were one of the first people I would always hear like beating the drum of paying whoever it is about with Bitcoin and everything like that, and kind of developing that circular economy. Now I don't see banging that drum as heavily, but you say obviously you can live on it and all that kind of stuff. Do you think that there's still a way to live fully on a Bitcoin standard in the US and kind of keep going it that way, or do you think that we still have to dabble in dollars and kind of, play both, have a foot in both ends at this current state of everything?
Yeah. So I love that question. Like, absolutely love that question. Been thinking about that for a lot of years. And to be just honest, like I didn't always feel that way. Like I didn't always feel that way. It was like, I'll tell you what it was. It was the Bitcoin Beach episode of Tales from the Crypt on Marty's podcast. It was my experience at Tony's Deli in Anaheim and realizing that the wallet is the exact same. Like the same thing there, like Orange County, California and El Salvador are like very completely different places, but it was literally the same thing. And so it didn't have to be different. It was both those things. And then it was like the state of like COVID in the world and stuff like at that time, because realized that like Bitcoin needs to start helping people now, like today. It has the ability to help people now today, and people need to like have the ability to think about what it can do for them today and not just kind of like pie in the sky in the future. So it was those things back then. And so, okay, so now to your thing of like, can a regular person live on a Bitcoin standard in the United States today? Like, yes, absolutely. And like, I'm like, look, I work at Fold, like, and so that's like, take that as you will, but like straight up, I've been trying to like think about this for a long time, for a lot of years, and Fold is the cleanest way for a regular person with a W-2 job to hold dollars as low and as few minutes or hours per like week and month as possible. Like there isn't another as clean solution like in order to do that. And so yes, like if you're interested in doing that, you can do that today.
Yeah, and it seems like more people are accepting, Bitcoin for whatever service it is. Whether it's, I mean, I think that we're even getting that. So, go ahead. I feel like I
Yeah.
struck a chord with something.
No, yeah, one more thing on that. But yes, the reason why the Fold product and the circular economy stuff is connected, the reason why that's connected is because you would ask people that question, is it possible to live on Bitcoin 4 years ago? And they would give you this very I'm gonna call him out by name, like Joel Valenzuela. Like you should go on his podcast, like Digital Cash Rundown, like great YouTuber. He has also been covering this for a long time. I interviewed him on my old podcast. He has like lived without a bank account in the United States for a lot of years. So like putting his money where his mouth is, putting his crypto where his mouth is, like on that, he's closed his bank account a long time ago. There was a lot of middle things you had to do, like a lot of like paying people with cash, a lot of like different things you had to do. There wasn't and that's what caused this break between the way I call out the like suburbs people and W2 people and like married people or just like with kids, like all this, like that's what I mean by regular person. So I say this thing of like OG Bitcoiners were great at talking about Bitcoin. They were not great at talking about personal finance. Like they were not great at staring like a W2 American in the face and being like, this is how you stop using dollars, and giving them like an actual software-based, tech-based approach to do that. So Fold does that now. And that's why Fold is positive and is interesting. But then you're able to withdraw Bitcoin and spend it in the circular economy like as well. And so that's what I love about it, is that you're backwards compatible to the legacy system in a way that you never have been able to before. And then all of the forwards compatibility to the circular economy stuff, that's the same as it has been. Like you could buy a beer 4 years ago and you can buy a beer right now. But it's becoming more and more popular. And the people with the more, call it again, name brand exchanges have the ability to pay now. So that's what's all different now.
Yeah, and I think that's continuing to grow too. And I mean, I think the great things like ZapRight and other things are allowing you to invoice and let you transact with that. Now, what is it going to take for us to get into more of I mean, we already sort of went over it with the whole number bias of the 0.21 Bitcoin, but when are we going to start pricing things in sats here, Brian? When are we going to start moving that way? Are you looking for the easiest way to get your Bitcoin off an exchange? Well, I've got it for you. It's Foundation Devices. They've got the #1 hardware wallet in the passport. They've even got a concierge service that can help you get your Bitcoin off an exchange within 1 hour private onboarding session. And they've got a great app too, which will give you extremely private features on that app, so you can use Bitcoin in the most secure way possible. So I've been working hard trying to get sponsors to help you get your Bitcoin off an exchange, and I found it with Foundation, and you can store your seed phrase with a stamp seed punch plate as well. So pair all those together, use promo code GREENCANDLE at foundation.xyz, and you'll get $10 off your entire order. All right, that's enough for me. Back to the show.
Yeah, so I think that's gonna be last. I'm not one of these. For a long time, I hate when you throw back the like, well, it has to be the same technology, then immediately, then that, whatever. Because I think that was people talking past each other for a long time. And when you talk to new people about it, they don't like hearing that. When they're saying, how do I spend it or where can I spend it? They don't want a lesson on Austrian economics. They just want to know like how the transaction works. And so that's the thing. However, why do I think that's going to be last? And why do I think that actually will be a thing? Because the mental thought of like a dollar of something, like I think pricing is going to take a long, like pricing will be the last thing. Yeah, pricing will be the last part after the technology itself is like paying $8 a Bitcoin, paying $100 a Bitcoin, paying $10,000 a Bitcoin becomes so fast all the time, both for backwards compatible things. Again, because that's the whole thing of your mortgage, like paying X dollars of Bitcoin backwards via ACH network, or pulling it out and paying $8 of Bitcoin forwards for the beer. Like that's the most mentally mainstream way that I've heard the most amount of people say it. And pricing things in sats, yeah, it will probably last.
Yeah, and I mean to your point too, I think El Salvador obviously made Bitcoin legal tender. Nayib Bukele, made waves, but I still don't think like very many businesses, if any businesses at all, are pricing in Bitcoin. They'll just allow you to pay in Bitcoin, but it's still all priced in dollars. So yeah, I mean, I agree with you. I think that that's going to be, in a sense, the last moving point.
Unless it's like betting markets or like bonuses and stuff. Like if it's a financial thing, like if it's me having a sports bet with you, then we can denominate it in the new currency and we have that agreement together. So where both parties are on the exchange fluctuation up and down, then it's fine. But when you're buying something and you're dealing with inputs and outputs on one side, and then this person is like over here, that's when it creates the mismatch for people.
Yeah, and I think I mean I'm not going to confirm or deny that I've done sports bets for a set amount of sats, but I mean I could see a world where
Yeah,
that
no,
occurs.
could be
Definitely.
useful.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, it definitely would be, or it definitely is useful in that sense too, because it definitely gets that bias in. But you look at El Salvador, right? You look at what the presidential candidates like Trump and RFK have said about utilizing Bitcoin. Now, do you think that that'll help the U.S. in a sense? Do you think that that'll get the dollar strength back up relative to Bitcoin? Like, how do you view that? Or are you more on the accelerationist kind of theory where you just think everything needs to crash and burn so we could get quicker to the hard money standard?
Um, it's very, very hard for me to wrap my head around the like dollar backed by Bitcoin stuff. I'm not, I'm, I can't, I don't understand it. Like, I don't understand it. In terms of like, strategic reserve of Bitcoin, I'm like, I get that. And I think that's positive. I think countries adopting it like as a reserve asset, I think companies adopting it as a reserve asset is positive. I think the fact that and that's why I think him purchasing the burger was actually like a big deal, is because he's now not going, that it's just with his actions, it was money then. And so you're not really ever able to put it back in the like, oh, it's just a savings asset, like ever really, which I think is good, which is I don't like being the nitpicker. Like, I don't want to be the nitpicker guy. I want to be the like overly optimistic guy, like rah, big tent, like team. The one thing I have with some of the like, balance sheet stuff is like, it feels like companies that are like way far ahead on the balance sheet stuff could start to like kind of work it into like the business a little more.
What do you mean by that?
Like, I think paying people in Bitcoin, I think taking it as payment, like if you're already doing that, I think that could start to get talked about a little bit in the corporation discussion.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, I think the first company that would obviously that comes to mind that would be able to do that is MicroStrategy. I know that I think like certain companies allow you to. Well, I mean, I don't know. I don't know how that works. I'm not obviously working for any of those big guys, but obviously, if you get your paycheck in something like Fold or something like Strike, some of these other companies, they allow you to allocate a certain
Yeah.
percentage to Bitcoin. And you think instead of just doing that, you could just accept Sats and go for it like that, and almost, I guess it's almost paid for as like a company stock in a sense,
Yeah.
kind of paid out that way.
Yeah, or I mean, another example is like when Tesla turned on Bitcoin payments on their checkout screen, that I thought was another hyper bullish thing. I thought that was incredible. Like, and the other thing that made that so incredible when they did that was that they used BTC Pay server. Like, they went on the internet to the open source thing, like just used it, and then they even sent back feedback like into the thing of like, check on this. Like, it literally was like open source software, just in real time. I thought that was awesome. And so that's an example of like using it in the business, but then also having it on the balance sheet.
Yeah, and I think that that's going to be the new wave. So, I mean, yeah, speaking of that, obviously we've seen Michael Saylor and 4 other publicly traded companies. We just had the CEO of Fold come on, Will, saying that, Fold has implemented a strategy with that. Like, how powerful do you think that that is? Not only like just on a personal level, but on the Bitcoin balance sheet, just kind of like looking at somebody like Michael Saylor and emulating what they did at MicroStrategy. Do you think that that's going to be a new wave to kind of help catapult us into the next, epoch or whatever we're going through here in Bitcoin, where, it's now just not only countries and nation states, but massive amounts of institutions just piling in and getting Bitcoin on their balance sheet?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Which is why, as an individual, having the 0.21 like matters. Like, you as an individual grabbing a slice of the fixed supply network matters. And there's never really been another, again, with dollars, you can't grab a fixed supply. You're always getting watered down, always getting watered down, always getting watered down. And so the corporations that have like tons and tons and tons and tons of it are always going to have more influence than you. But like, you grabbing a fixed supply of the network, you're literally on the same like rising tide with the corporations, with the countries, with all that stuff.
Yeah. So then what's left to who's left, or what's the target place to start adopting Bitcoin? Is it just like everybody's already kind of has like a pocket here or there, and it's just now for mass adoption for everybody to just follow the leader's lead? Or do you think there's like another group that is somewhat missing the boat on, where Bitcoin could be extremely helpful? Because I don't see one right now. I think
Yep.
everybody's kind of like there's pockets of and I'm just, maybe that's why I'm thinking I'm just missing something. But I see, pension funds slightly getting on it, some governments, some institutions, obviously people, the
Mhm.
plebs. Like,
Mhm.
who's left now?
I think we've been hitting on it all day. And I think it's that you have to look for each of the areas in your life and up the percentage of Bitcoin usage in that area. Like, we've all Bitcoin personal finance advice for a long time has been savings technology, savings technology, savings technology, which it is, and crushed it. And we all crushed it. Like, we're all already at 100%, like in that bucket. Great. Like, we did it. I think a lot of people are starting to ask the what's next, like what's next, what's next, and yeah, and it's rather than looking externally at what's next, it's looking internally at what's next. Like, is Bitcoin still a bolt-on side thing that you do with the DCA outside of your family's budget? Or is your partner incorporated into Bitcoin being a core piece of your like personal finances? And do you have like a family goal for how much Bitcoin to hold and how much dollars to hold? Like, those are different worlds. Like, those are different worlds. And so I think that's what's going to happen next is people are going to be asking for more and more ways to like incorporate Bitcoin deeper into their personal finances rather than having it be like a bolt on, because you're right. Everyone, or every kind of like type of organization, individual to country to like institution, has begun to make a decision on it.
Yeah, and so like with that, how much of a role do you think the ETFs are going to play going forward now? Because
Yep.
I mean, I'm big on self custody, but the
Yep.
ETFs obviously, give access to Bitcoin that others didn't give access to. Now, I'm always wary because last cycle we had FTX, Celsius, all these people selling paper Bitcoin. Now, I'm not quite sure that the ETFs are going to be able to do that with SEC regulation and everything, but you never know, right? So,
It,
don't trust, verify. Some of these ETFs have not disclosed their wallets. So,
yep.
how do you view the ETFs and kind of that development of getting people into Bitcoin?
Yeah. So this is a great question too. Um, Look, you knew me back at the choice days, and something that I came up with back then was like account types are not the problem, like the money is the problem, right? Okay, account types are not the problem, the money is the problem. So you have the ability to hold Bitcoin straight up in retirement accounts. You have the ability to hold Bitcoin straight up in a direct deposit account in your like primary account that you run your personal finances from. One example where I'm still using the ETF in my own personal finances is in a health savings account, because my understanding is that there isn't a financial product out there yet from a company that I'm aware of that lets you get Bitcoin in like Bitcoin in a health savings account. So that's one example where the ETF is like still filling that need. That's one way to look at it. And then another, like the second way to look at it would be, so that's one way to look at it, of we have to continue innovating on products to get native Bitcoin replacing fiat money throughout the products. Another random shout out is like there's life insurance. Like there's a life insurance company that's like making noise on Twitter, which is cool to see, like the more products. The other way to look at it is I think ETFs are a layer 2 of Bitcoin. Okay. I think everything is a layer 2 of Bitcoin. And I think ETFs are one of those. And so I think it's going to be in your Bitcoin personal finances. It's going to stop being how much Bitcoin do I hold? How much dollars do I hold? It's going to start being how much Bitcoin do I hold in my retirement account? How much Bitcoin do I hold in my like main personal finance account that I pay my bills out of? How much Bitcoin do I hold in my own wallet that I take to my local meetup every week? How much Bitcoin do I hold with like this insured custody? How much Bitcoin do I hold with like that layer 2 and like all that stuff? That's what I think. Those are my 2 thoughts on ETFs.
Yeah, and I mean, I agree with you. I think at the end of the day, everything's good for Bitcoin. So I mean, I think it's going to be a lot of people just getting into it, but it's like a first touch point. So the way, I mean, obviously everybody compares Bitcoin to gold. So I kind of look at the way that the gold ETFs have reacted, and now gold prices doubled more than that in the past 5 years. But if you look at the outflows of the gold ETFs, they've been net outflows for the past 3 years plus. And I think obviously the big reason for that, for the price increase, is because people are buying the physical gold assets, specifically central banks. So now that's where I think the Bitcoin's going to go. But I think all these things are going to be accelerated even quicker than gold, because we're just going through massive amounts of money printing, the de-dollarization, you name it here. And now I think that's why we're seeing, countries like Bhutan secretly mining, like smaller countries that can take these risks, start to get into Bitcoin and try to figure it out that way. And so I think, the ETFs will give people more access. It'll, open up eyes of bigger name people, because the largest asset managers in the world are now talking about Bitcoin, releasing things about Bitcoin. And, I think it's just starting that flywheel, man. And it's, that luckily, we're a couple plebs that were able to beat some of the biggest money managers in the world and some of the, largest, most powerful governments. But, do you think that is Bitcoin ready for all of this? I guess is a long-winded question with, the rapid development that we're seeing.
Yeah. So a few things off that. Number one, I hate all the gold comparisons. So like I never try to use those. I completely just reject them and like steer the conversation differently. Number two, I don't love the word. I'm like nitpicking you. I'm not trying to play it on the spot. I also don't love the word plebs. Like I think it just it completely strips away the concept. Like, no, you own a finite supply of a finite network that's like taking over the world. Like you were early to a network that's like growing or whatever. So I understand where that's coming from, of like our parents and our parents' parents were like on the fiat hamster wheel and like had like there is like literal corruption in the world and like there's a problem. And so I understand the like underdog story of all of that. But I think we're at this point where Bitcoiners need to realize that they do have influence and they do have the ability to like impact the world. And so I try to just like hammer that because I want more people to like say that. So do I think like Bitcoin's ready? I kind of like, yes, but because of that mindset thing a little bit. And I know maybe I'm just being like kind of overly nuanced and annoying or whatever, but there is, I think, just still a little bit. This to the Bitcoin community. This is very like inside baseball, like Bitcoin community. The Bitcoiners who have been just on the internet and part of the talkers and part of the thing, I think sometimes are hitting a little bit of a ceiling of like, the Libertarian Party, they love to be the losers. They're just like, we're the losers, but we're the purest like losers and like all this stuff. And they can't envision it like going mainstream. They can't envision that their ideas actually are mainstream and are going to go mainstream. And whenever someone in the mainstream says something that's like half agreement, the initial reaction is always to like correct the other half or correct the other half or correct the other half, rather than just be like interested that the overturn window is shifting. Okay. So Bitcoin, yes, is absolutely like going mainstream, and that's like happening in real time. I don't think that everyone is like mentally ready to like be a big influence on the world as it does go mainstream.
So you think it's an influence on just like the mentality thing opposed to just like the technology?
Yeah, like I think the technology is ahead of the mentality of some of the early adopters. Yeah.
Interesting, because I feel like majority of people, I feel like they say it's the opposite. So whether it's like the Lightning Network or everything like that, I mean, I don't want to get too deep into the weeds of that because honestly, I don't know. So that's why I always ask the experts about that. But I do agree with you though. I think it is a mentality thing. Go ahead.
No, I get what you're saying about the position of the technology is still clunky. It could improve. Yeah, the Lightning Network. I don't know. Could global payment scan. Like I get that. I get that. But no, honestly, from again, like the country stacking it, the corporation stacking it, like individuals still being able to grab a significant chunk of it. That's all happening in real time, that I don't think that. Yeah, I think that how you asked earlier, the whole like inflation and money printing and just like what's going to be the dramatic event, I think there are a lot of people on the Bitcoin side waiting for that dramatic event of where the technology will be like, oh, the technology is ready, like the technology. And it's like, guys, like that's actually not how software works. Like it's not going to be like ready one day. And that's what was so beautiful about the Bitcoin Beach story, dude, back in the day, of like Lightning wasn't supposed to work back then either. If Mike Peterson had asked Twitter, like, hey, like I'm thinking about doing this beach thing with these 500 families, 500 people, like, what do you guys think? Dude, the amount of people would have been like, that's the dumbest idea ever. The phones won't work. Like, what about the internet? Like, like all of that, dude. And he was just like, no, like Bitcoin's better than fiat money. Like, seems interesting to like try to do this, right? And that's the same thing that like the limiting factor is not the technology. The limiting factor is the brains of people that are already holding Bitcoin.
I love it, man. I love it. And I think that's a good place to wrap it up, because I think, that mindset shift, I think it's going to start coming with more conversations like this. And I think, the 0.21 Bitcoin has really resonated with a lot of people. So hopefully you're helping a lot of people there shift that mindset and get to the place where Bitcoin is better money. But Brian, you've been very generous with your time. So why don't you tell people where they can find out more about you and more about the great stuff you guys are doing at Fold?
Yeah, no, you're the man, dude. Thank you for putting good content on YouTube. Thank you for being a Bitcoin YouTuber. Yeah, search Brian Harrington on YouTube. Search Fold App on YouTube. Please subscribe to those channels. On X, you can shoot me a DM anytime about Fold related support. I'll escalate anything for you. It's at Brian Harrington. And yeah, if you don't have Fold yet, use the link in the description. You can get a 20,000 sat bonus. And no, just let it go. Thumbs up and subscribe to positive Bitcoin content on YouTube.
Yeah, man, let's do it. Yeah, check out Brian's channel and the Fold channel as well. I'll link all that in the show notes. And Brian, thanks so much, man. Thank you for tuning in to the latest episode of the State of Bitcoin podcast. If you really enjoyed this one, I've got another one cooking up for you. You can click that right here and you can go to the next episode, which is an absolute banger, where I'm bringing you only the latest and greatest guests. Or if you're looking for more macro-related content, you could check out my other channel, Macro Insights Pod. I got it linked for you right here. So where I'm bringing you more about stocks, real estate, traditional finance stuff. So go ahead and check that out. And if you enjoyed this podcast, go ahead and hit that like, hit that subscribe button, and tell a friend to tell a friend. All right, enough from me. I'll see you at the next one.